Hello and welcome to the second episode of Stream of Conscious Noise. I am from the Midwest, although I do not actually have that accent. Sorry for the late upload, guys. It's been a rough week. A couple of drunk white boys crashed into my car and bumped the shit out of my fender. And then today I lost my debit card. Except for I didn't actually lose my debit card. What happened is I went to the pharmacy yesterday, and they did that whole thing where they're like, card in the bag, okay? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And I left my fucking debit card in the bag. And so what, of course, I did is, as any sane person does, when they find out their debit card is missing, but they have all their other cards, they call the bank, and they cancel it. So I got it hot carded. I got a new card coming. And then about 5 minutes later is when I figure out, oh shit, it's in the stupid pharmacy bag. I called the bank back, and they're like, too late. And so I'm kind of fuckered on money at the moment. I borrowed a $50 bill from my mama, and yeah. Well, wait for that card, I guess. Anyway. Glad to be here with you guys. We got a great interview coming up with Adam Medford of Strange Creature Collages. You may be familiar with their work, and if you aren't, check out the Strange Creature Collages. That's on Facebook or on Instagram. You should be able to find it. Wonderful work. Little NSFW. Meh. Decent amount of medical gore, let's just say. But you'll find out more in the interview, and you'll understand, because trust me, it is absolutely wonderful, beautiful artwork. I'd like to thank everybody who listened to the first episode. I'd like to thank everybody's patience, because I did say that this would come out yesterday, and I failed to actually upload it. And I'd especially like to apologize to Adam, because I'm sure they were looking forward to this. However, I'd like to get in today with some gear, because why not? Because why is because I've been recording some new Coumadin material recently. I'll put my own links in the description this time. I failed to do so last time. And so I have a lot of pedals, but whenever I buy a synth, I generally will either keep it for a little while and then sell it, or it becomes a massive part of my collection and I never want to sell it. And so far, I think that leaves me with 3 synths, 1 Moog, a nice Roland keyboard just for some poly, and this, the Behringer Neutron. I got this in a trade, actually. I can't even remember what I traded for it exactly. I think it was a Death by Audio Evil filter. So about equal value. But this thing is a beast. You might have seen it around. I know a lot of other people have these on their boards. And if you're into modular, but you're not really sure, this is a cool way to start out, because it's one of those little semi-modular things. Me, I'm just not into modular, but I really like things that have kind of like modular parts, kind of like this patch bay that it has, which is wonderful. I need to get more of these little patch cables for it. But this is a huge basis of my Coumadin sound now. And the reason why that is because it doesn't have a keyboard, you know? It's one of those things that is just, you have, your basic kind of what it's playing, and it constantly plays that, and you just tweak, and you can tweak and tweak and tweak and tweak and tweak, but it's constantly going. So that sort of the basic tracks of a Coumadin are based off of a Neutron, either affected with the patch bay, or I have been trying running it through pedals, and it does take the pedals pretty well, which is nice. So, and I mean, it's got a wonderful selection of effects on it. You've got your multiple envelopes, you've got wave shapers, you've got 2 different oscillators that you can tune, and you can change the width and shapes of those individually. And so just even on board with it, there's a ton you can do, and then adding the patch bay that just multiplies. And then you throw some pedals behind it. This thing is insane. I love it. And for I think like about $200 is like pretty good range, like somewhere in there, like anywhere from like probably like 180 to 225. That's really not that bad for something that works this well. It has a really nice sound. I mean, Behringer, not exactly known to be the most expensive things on the planet, but this is, solid, like metal, mostly metal encasement with, I think, plastic end boards. It's got this beautiful red facing. Anyway, not exactly a new piece of gear by any means, and like I said, I'm sure several of you are familiar with it. But if you're not, or if you just have never gotten one, or if you sold one in the past and you've regretted it, because I've done that with some things before, it's got my recommendation, and like I said, I use it for a lot of my Coumadin stuff now. Second piece of gear, now this one's definitely even older, rather, but it's younger to me. I just got this in a pretty sweet eBay win, actually. It's an Alesis SR16 drum machine. I will say that I'm cheating a little bit insofar as this is not going to be for noise per se. I'm going to start a nice little like one-man bass grind band, so I'm going to say it's close enough. But it's a funky little thing. According to Reverb, these float for like $150, which seems to be what it retailed for back in the day. I don't know how. I'm not 100%. Yeah. Okay. Manufacturer's date on the back here says January 1999. So this thing is old. It's a 22-year-old machine. It's in good condition. The one I have here, it's in good condition. The back looks nice. The face just has your typical wear. And just a little 16-bit drum machine. I haven't really looked into it a ton. I kind of just turned it on and played with it a little bit. But for something that came out in the late 90s, like mid to late 90s, reasonably realistic drum sounds and a decent spread of them that you can select through. I will say the impact that you have to do on these buttons is a lot. But that's okay. I mean, considering I'm going to be making grindcore with it, I don't think it's a huge deal. But yeah, I'm actually a fan of it. And like I said, I wouldn't pay $150 for this thing. I would definitely not. I won it on eBay for $75. So if you can find like one that's maybe a little beat up for like $80 or something like that, I'd recommend it if you're into drum machines. I think I'm going to find I'm going to have a lot of fun with this once I figure out all the other little mechanics and the sequencer on it. Again, this is me just checking my phone to be like, oh, what did I want to talk about next? Oh yeah. As I said, the Neutron is kind of semi-modular, and as I've mentioned before, I'm a huge pedal head. I've like a table full of pedals in here, and I guess that's always been an argument. And I always like to pose these sort of, A/B questions. What do you guys think? You prefer modular? You prefer a bunch of pedals? What do you like? You prefer just a chunk of metal and a Shure microphone, and you just bang them together? Some people are purists like that. Some people are just like, I want to make everything on one laptop with VSTs, and that's it. So argue it out in the comments. I'll get down there with you because, like I said, I like some semi-modular stuff. I have a big fat-ass Moog that I love, more than the children that I don't have. And then I also have a billion pedals, so I'm kind of just middle of the road. But yeah, duke it out in the comments. Please start a comment thread. I'll duck in there. Anybody have favorite pedals? Anybody who likes pedals? Favorite pedals? Because I can say for certain there are a couple in here that that I love more than the others. Let's just say one that I've recommended to a few people, and I don't know if anybody's ever bought it, but I never see this. It's a KMA Machines. It's the Moai Mea. That's Moaimaea. I say Moai Mea. Could be pronounced something completely different. I'm not sure. It's got Easter Island heads on the front plate. This is probably my favorite pedal that I own. It's a triple octaver with a fuzz circuit. And first of all, I'm a sucker for octaves. I love octave pedals. Anything with an octave in it, an octaver, whatever. And then this has a fuzz circuit that goes through it also. So what it does is you have your 4 knobs, one for your clean signal, one for 1 octave up, and then you got an octave down and 2 octaves down. And so it's got the three buttons, one of which is your octaver, which is just your doubling on your clean and putting it and adding the fuzz circuit. You got a shriek knob in the middle, which adds your your 1 up octave, and then you got your drone, which adds your bottom 2. And then you've got the knobs where you can adjust how much each of those octaves shows through. So you can have your just 1 up, or you can have all of them on, but like the lower octaves coming through more. I use this in basically everything. It is pretty much the one pedal that never comes off of my chain. I love this thing to bits. It may be a little harder to find than some of the other things that I've recommended. I think I paid somewhere south of $300 for it. I believe I got it from Primax out in New Jersey, if anybody's familiar. Highly recommend Primax. They're on Reverb. They're at this shop out in New Jersey. They will sell like B stock and minty fresh pedals for like a decent percentage below retail price. Like, you can get some really good stuff from them in really great condition for, very reasonable prices compared to like the average market price. So that's enough about me chatting about all the cool shit I have, because we're here to talk about noise, and we're here to talk about art, and we're here to talk about interesting shit that you may not have heard of. So what I want to get to now is the big meat of this episode, and something that I'm very happy to have done, and I'm absolutely stoked for everyone to listen to this, is my interview with Adam Medford of Strange Creature Collages. They have a interesting perspective of not being a noise maker themselves, a noisician, if you will, but they kind of run tangent to the circle. They work with collage and arts, and they do cover art. They do cover art for grindcore bands and death metal bands as well. And you'll see. Let's just get into it.
Hello.
Hello, Adam.
Hey, how are you, Ryan?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm just sitting down to watch There Will Be Blood for the first time in my life ever.
Oh, nice. That'll be a heavy one. That'll be something nice to follow this up with.
Oh yeah, totally.
So
how's your weekend been?
Pretty good so far. Pretty relaxing. Just selling off some tapes, making up some room in the house.
Nice. Very good.
How about you?
Oh, it's been good. Decided to spend some time in the Warwick Hotel in downtown Seattle.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah, just kind of a nice weekend to get away from it all and kind of disappear,
Fair enough. Absolutely. Especially after last year and the weather getting all nice again, and yeah.
Oh, yeah. And Facebook is reminding me of all that shit that was happening this time last year. I'm like, oh, I remember that.
Right? Indeed. So, I was just hoping I could ask you a few questions, talk to you a little bit about, like, your work, and just kind of how it ties into noise, and how, like, it just kind of like that tangent, which is super interesting.
Yeah, totally. I'm an open book.
Sweet. And so, I mean, I've been drawing, and I love drawing for my entire life. Uh, do you remember like when you first got into art, or what like your first experience with that is?
Yeah, I used to draw a whole bunch when I was a kid. I was obsessed with it. Um, my sister, she's an artist, and I remember when I was a kid seeing some of her art, which was very, very graphic and
Oh
kind
yeah.
of beyond my scope of understanding, feeling kind of not scared, but seeing such new things, with themes and concepts I had no grasp of yet. I really felt inspired by all of that. Um, you know, kind of. I also remember being inspired by like Where's Waldo books, and I think the first experience where I really appreciated like high detailed busy art was I was looking through a book we had. I think it was like the Children's Encyclopedia or something, but there was a full spread of that painting, The Triumph of Death.
Oh.
Yeah, and if you've ever seen that, it's just there is no safe place in that whole painting. I
No.
remember I would just scan it for what felt like hours looking for a place where I could hide in that circumstance, and I'm like, there's no safe place here.
That is
But
that is an amazing painting.
oh yeah, yeah, done by a landscape artist. I think that was kind of one of the only paintings of that kind that they had done, and it's always been a favorite of mine. But yeah, early childhood exposure, um, artists in the family. My brother was actually he enjoyed drawing too, so him and I would sit down and draw these little scenes of ninjas dismembering
Yeah.
each other. um, but yeah, it's been something I've always been kind of not just fascinated with, but borderline obsessed with.
And you use a lot of moratorium, like I guess do you do a lot of medical stuff? Like do you get a lot of like medical textbooks and things like that? I see a lot of like just that sort of images in your work.
Yeah, initially the theme. Um, I feel like I missed a calling in life. Ever since I was a kid, I was like, oh, I want to be a bone doctor. I want to be a doctor, and I want to work in the death care industry and all this. So I always had this affinity for anatomy, skeletons in particular. Um, I think initially what kind of got me really into the quote unquote gore collages. I call them extreme anatomy or extreme texture collages, but it was seeing the first two Carcass records when I was like 10 years old in a record
Yeah.
store. And I saw those and I was like, whoa, what is this, And then doing collage work in art class in elementary school, like that was all kind of it was stuff that I really wanted to pursue. Um, but yeah, the medical, I guess the necrocentric nature of my work comes from just a fascination with anatomy, um, and a fascination with deep textures. And I have atlases of forensic pathology that I use. Um, I would always try to not go on like best gore and stuff like that,
Yeah.
because that stuff's hard to look at. It really is. And when I'm sourcing material, I do have kind of a visceral response to a lot of the stuff I see.
Yeah. Fair enough.
I wouldn't say I'm desensitized by any means. I actually would believe that I have kind of a hypersensitivity. And I think that's why I work so well with the textures.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. And you talk about it textures, and something another thing that I notice a lot in your work is your use of color is absolutely brilliant. Because a lot of people will think of bones and corpses and guts and things like that, and you think of like just dull grays and browns and things,
Right.
or like piss grave
Yeah, yeah,
covers.
totally. Oh, the
But
mud.
the tub and stuff.
Ugh.
But um, your work always seems to have these really bright colors, and the colors are always used just so well.
I
And
appreciate that.
is that a it's meaningful thing, or is that just kind of something that happens, or?
I'll be honest, it's something that happens. I feel like my use of colors comes from. I'll tell you this first off. When I see like pictures or camouflaged animals kind of fitting into their surroundings, I can spot that animal really quickly. Um, I don't know if it's like a hunter's eye or something, but I just know how to look at colors. When I start using them, it's just a very kind of visceral thing. It's hard for me to kind of build framework or blueprints for what I want to do or how I want to use these colors. I just kind of I let my I let myself go with it because the more I try to control it, um, the less control I actually have over it. So
Oh yeah.
my use of colors, I really feel like is kind of a natural talent, something that comes instinctually, or for lack of a better word.
Yeah, just a talent and a good eye for color. I mean, that's super
Yeah,
cool too. Like sometimes sometimes people are like, oh yeah, I specifically do this, and then sometimes people are like, nope, that just happens, and it's
yeah,
equally awesome both ways.
right, right.
And so it's interesting because you have this sort of interesting position of kind of running in the with the noise circle, or kind of like in the edge of it, and then and then I know you work a lot with like other like death metal bands and things like that for doing cover art. Um, so, and you said that you've had like sort of a tangential interest in noise also, and you have very visceral reactions to certain types of art. So, what is your experience with noise, or
Oh,
how did you
well,
get
I
into
mean,
that?
yeah, my first exposure was hearing Brighter Death Now, and I remember there was an album called Inner War, and I was looking through it and I remember feeling unwell
Yeah.
after looking. Yeah, especially with that album, I'm like, ooh, there's some darkness here, and
Definitely.
first trying to listen to it, I was very accustomed to like grindcore, gore grind, black metal, and all that, and hearing just straight black noise, I didn't know how to listen to it really. So I kind of, for a long time, just wrote it off. I'm like, it's noise, it's cool. I don't understand it, and I don't know how to listen to it, but I think I get it. Um, but then I started working with um, noise artists, providing artwork for their releases, and in doing that, I started to understand themes and concepts. Working with Mike from Striations is where I really started to kind of understand themes and how the art matches with the noise, and kind of how to listen to the noise too. It for me is kind of more of a meditative type thing. That's how I listen to it.
For
And there
sure.
are textures, the audio textures that kind of tickle your brain in a sense. Um, I feel, with my work visually, it does the same thing. It kind of, you don't know where to look. You find something new each time you make a pass over it. And I feel like noise was like that. I would hear something new every time. And then I heard Spiteful Womb, and that that was very meditative. I started to kind of get lost in the tones and all that. And then my interest came. I was like, wow, this is deep stuff. It's on the surface, it's harsh noise and it's hard to listen to. But then I started kind of I was guided by friends that I was meeting, like Mac from God is War. He kind of helped me secure an understanding of like power electronics versus ambient noise or black noise and all that, and the differences and similarities therein. So I guess I started teetering towards the power electronic side of things because I really, at the end of the day, enjoyed percussion.
Yeah.
Yeah, and industrial and all that. So I found something that I could kind of listen to rhythmically with that, with just ambient noise. I found it helps me to drop into a deeper state of mind to kind of let it in and understand it with my gut, I guess,
Yeah.
a little more.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. It does make a lot of sense, and it seems like a very similar to the way that I got into noise, where you are very, where it is very kind of like what's the word I'm looking for? Like you're being inducted by someone else. You kind of have to have a mentor or someone to speak for you, and
Right.
And then they really just guide you through things, and then you sort of realize, and striations. That I'm glad you got in touch with Mike, because I feel like striations does sonically what you do visually. I think you touched on that, but I think that is quite accurate. That there's that it is a lot going on, but it comes together as a whole piece that is cohesive and wonderful and you can keep making passes over it and keep finding something different, and then every time it just not becomes something different but becomes something more.
Yeah And these sheer genius too. Going through Trauma Code 2, that was a hard project for me, because car accidents, car wrecks, traumatic death in that respect is one of my deepest fears. Not for myself. I've accepted to a degree my own mortality, but more what made it hard is that's one of my deepest fears, is losing someone I love to like a car crash or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
So going through and sourcing material for one of my worst fears, emotional fears, I guess, that was really tough. And especially some of the photos I chose are they're infamous just because of the story behind them, and I wanted to kind of, I guess the best way I could, respectfully use that and use it honorably.
Absolutely.
And just kind of mix it well with the theme of Trauma Code 2, which was car wrecks. And I think Mike, what he did, listening to that, it put me in the spot. There's a particular track where you hear the EMTs or the paramedics trying to calm someone who's panicked and pinned in immense pain. And you hear that, and then it's just like these intermittent strikes or stabs of very, very harsh noise,
Yeah.
That whole album was a bit of an emotional journey for me.
Yeah.
It was confrontational deeply, and it was really an honor to be a part of it, because I felt like with that piece, first off, it took me months. I hit a wall so hard that I was like, no, I can't fucking do this. I'm like trembling, trying to find this material. And then now that I have it, how do I put it all together?
Right.
And finally, when it all clicked, I was listening to the tracks that were provided for me for inspiration. And I just let it go. I'm like, all right, cut out. First off, find your lines you want to cut along, cut those out. Let's build something. And when I finally built it, I didn't realize that this whole image kind of has like almost an optical illusion of being concave.
Yeah.
And there's only one living, or there are two living people in the entire piece. And one of them, if you focus in the center where it feels like it's dropping in, there's a child being saved from a terrible car wreck, and you can see the panic and the trauma on his face, and there's an EMT that's there helping him out, you know. And that to me is kind of the little morsel of the good in it, you know. It's like, okay, not everyone's fucked in this piece here, you know.
Yeah.
I was looking at it recently, and it kind of looks like that kid is driving the whole madness almost.
Just like it's that one.
Yeah. So
Well, that does kind of go into my.
What was that?
Goes into the question I was going to ask, which is something like, I guess you could really ask of any artist, which is how you balance doing something like making artwork for somebody else's records with your own, your own artistic direction, and then you have that sort of like the third factor of having really heavy material that you have to source that you want to be, respectful of. Like,
right.
That is a sort of balance. And you sort of answered that, but if there was any other...
Well, yeah, we can elaborate. I mean, it's challenging when you're working with someone else or kind of like doing a job, you know?
Yeah.
My weird thing is I feel like I save my masterpieces for myself, and then my clients get my trim, and I'm trying to correct that, you know? The hard thing is when you feel like you're doing a job, I have this just office space approach to work. Like, it starts to become a chore, and it gets tough. So, but I work through it the best I can, and sometimes there's a bit of a cost. It's like, well, we got to wait for the artist to be inspired, because I don't want to crank out shit for people. But yeah, the balance can be tough. Sometimes I work in great disbalance, and it's usually quite challenging if I'm trying to like actually build framework and work along like plans and stuff, because that's when I don't feel like I'm actually working from my gut or my emotions. It's more like kind of a logical approach, I guess.
Yeah.
Which to me, I'm not going to say it kills the soul, but it makes it, there's a whole level of, there's a new level of challenge right there.
I agree. As I've designed tattoos for certain people before, and I know what it's like when they're like, they want to do a change, and you're like, in your soul, you're just like, oh, but we shouldn't.
Yeah, we shouldn't. I don't want this.
It is a difficult sort of thing, and yeah, I can't imagine the sourcing and the use of what you do, and you do it so beautifully, and when you do look at your art, it is a very visceral reaction, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like a Cannibal Corpse artwork where it seems like it's that way to be, like sort of like a shock value, or just sort of be like, haha, look at this nasty thing. Like it has meaning to it, and it has depth to it, and I feel like you offer up depth with the respect and the beauty that it actually has underneath everything, and
Right.
But also the rawness. And in other words, I'm just a huge fan of your artwork. I think it's absolutely fantastic.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
And I super appreciate you talking to me. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about? Anything else you wanted to add?
Well, yeah, because I get a lot of questions I get are, first off, like, where do you get your shit from? And I try to be vague, because, first off, just Google search what you want to look for. It's pretty easy, but then now with the way the internet has changed, you can't find half that shit. I don't know what happened, but this is recent. It's, the internet's changed. And so what I do, I invest in my source material. These pathology books aren't cheap,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of them are unscanned, untainted material, so therefore pretty rare. And So usually my go-to answer when people want to know where I get my material from, I keep it vague, but I'm like, just here's where you look. Look for medical textbooks, atlases of forensic pathology, and that's where I kind of leave it, because I came across this stuff. It wasn't easy to find this stuff, you know. So I had to do a lot of work. I've had to invest in it. And also I have people that are trying to replicate what I do, and they ask for advice on that, and I don't know what to say. I'm like, well, I mean, you study the artists that you appreciate, definitely, but strive to create your own style as well. And that's what I've done. I've seen plenty of gore collages from wonderful artists, but the thing is they have their own style, and that's where I started to develop and cultivate, you know, my craft or whatever. I started to kind of just do my own thing, and when I started repeating, like using the same source material over and over again, I'm like, okay, well, I noticed this is getting redundant, so how can I change this material? So that's when I started bringing in digital work. It's real easy to actually create your own material from, like, say, creating one singular face from like 12 different faces, you know?
Right.
That's where I try to challenge myself. And from there, you get these big singular pieces that kind of just take a spirit and mind of their own, you know?
That makes sense.
I would say the best language I speak is artistic language. These pieces I do are a clear communication of my internal world to the outside world, so I feel as if I'm a conduit, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm all right with my words, but sometimes some of these pieces I look at and I'm like, oh, I see what's going on here, you know?
Yeah.
And you'll notice the teeth, this obsession with teeth that I have.
Yes.
I'll share with you. That comes from deep trauma with the dentist, a very traumatic experience, a childhood experience with the dentist. And I didn't really ever kind of think about it. I'm like, oh, teeth, you know, like they're nasty. But my mom, who's a psychotherapist, recently brought it up. She's like, Adam, man, you got a lot of teeth in your work. You remember what happened, and, you know, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
man.
oh shit, I forgot about that.
Well, my severest, like my most direct sympathy with the psychotherapist, psychiatrist parent. My dad's a school psychologist for the well, he used to be for the high school that I went to. So yeah, that's always just an interesting thing to deal with in life.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, some of my interests, I want to get into, you know, art therapy and stuff like that. Psychology is definitely an interest of mine. I got halfway through the degree and I was like, oh shit, I don't want to be a drug counselor, you know.
Right.
Too much. That's just fighting for that 2% success rate can be soul crushing, you know.
Absolutely.
But I think art, there are a lot of people out there the same way, where art is really the only language they have. So yeah. I think working with people, you know, people in the spectrum, or, you know, people that have gone through deep trauma, I think art is the way to get that darkness out and to keep it from having dominion over your emotions. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And I embrace dark art. The darker, the better. I don't believe in censorship. You know, I mean, to a degree, there are things that can be harmful out there. We'll address it when it comes, but I am vehemently, for the most part, against censorship and, you know, safe art, I guess. It's cool.
Yeah.
You know, some flower paintings are great every now and then, but that's not the entirety of art. So
yeah, I
would bid for anybody who's offended by my work to just kind of look a little deeper into it and see that it's not exploitative. There's a message behind everything, and, you know, just open yourself up to the shadow every once in a while. Make you feel happy. Kind of think of skeleton meditations and graveyard contemplations and stuff that the Buddhists practice, you know?
There you go.
That's kind of what I try to that's what I try to do with my art. They're just deep contemplations of my own mortality.
Well, I'd really like to thank you so much for this. I super appreciate it. I appreciate talking to you, all the insights into your work. As I said, I'm a huge fan. And
Oh yeah. Oh, of course, Ryan. It's been a huge honor to answer these questions and to offer some insight. I really appreciate, you know, your support. You've been following me for a few years now, and I really I value our relationship and what we've done together so far, and just the general understanding. And I appreciate the opportunity to answer some questions too.
I'll talk to you
I'll be
later.
seeing you. I'll be seeing you around online, and I'll definitely talk to you later.
Sweet. Peace
All
out,
right.
man.
Enjoy your night.
See ya.
Bye.
Hey, everybody, just sneaking back in here before I close this out. I know that was kind of a long interview, but there was no part of it that I thought we could cut. It was so great talking to Adam, and I highly recommend listening to the whole thing. So if you're one of those skipper assholes, you probably haven't even heard this part, but, go back, listen to all of it. I promise, it's worth it. Anyway, regardless of whether you listen to the whole thing or not, if you're hearing this now, thank you so much for listening. Come back next week. I promise I'll be more on time with the next episode. Stay harsh. Love you guys.